Julie, you're
My husband,
I'm
the
sorry.
county,
Julie, I think you're logged in twice.
Okay, you guys, the live stream is started. So you are live, so you can go.
All right, Jeff, I think you're going to want to call us to order.
Yeah, so with that, Tim, could you, I see Julie is in the meeting twice, and that's going to create quite a feedback, so could you remove one of those?
Yeah, just 1 second. I will get that going.
We
So
can't hear you, Julie.
Julie, your mic is muted.
Julie, can you unmute your mic?
there, I got it now.
Perfect.
Yep.
Those on a PC, Control D will open your mic and mute your mic. Control D, it's a pretty slick feature. I don't know what it is on a Mac. Dan?
Is Command D on a Mac?
Oh, that's good. Thank you.
I removed Julie the second one, so she's only in once. So you guys can call it to order.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks,
Thank you, Tim.
So with that, we will call the Thursday, April 30th workshop to order. Do we want to do roll call, Member Clerk? You're muted.
Yeah, I don't have the roll call sheet, but hold on. Member Peterson is here. Member Tyson,
Here.
I saw you. Member Olson,
Here.
Member Corcoran,
Here.
Member Ketto,
Here.
and Member Rayfield.
Present.
Did I miss anybody?
Sounds good. Seeing
I think
everyone's,
that's everybody.
seeing everybody's present, I'll turn it over to
counted.
Dr. Massey.
Thank you, Member Chair Peterson. Hey, thanks for everybody for accommodating a work session on relative short notice. I began to, gain an appreciation for how rapidly things were developing and moving in the district, and realizing that my weekly 2 to 3 to 4 page communications may or may not keep you up to speed with how quickly things were moving. I know a number of you were reaching out with questions and ideas, and it just made sense that we get ourselves together, not around a board meeting agenda, but in a more open setting to talk through different things related to our school closure and distance learning. So thank you for accommodating this schedule, and we'll take as much time tonight as we need to. I don't expect it's going to be overly long, but a great opportunity for us to get updated on topics, ask questions, shoot ideas at our administrative team, things you want us thinking about as well. You're all aware that we're now in distance learning until the end of the school year. Our staff were frankly anticipating that. Our teachers, our paras, our bus drivers, our food service staff, of course, our administrative team, we were all anticipating that, but I'll be honest, when that call came through, there was a bit of a jolt and a reality check that we are now truly in unprecedented times, with up to a quarter of the school year now being in a distance learning format. I have to say that our administrative team, our building principals, our teachers, our paras, our bus drivers, our food service staff, our custodians are doing an incredible job setting up our system, but also delivering learning and food and childcare on a daily basis. We have 2 goals driving distance learning. First is to support and advance learning, and number 2 remain connected with our kids. Our goal is not to be cutting edge technology, although that's helpful, but that is only a tool. We are not trying to outdo each other with the latest and best technology. Again, our goal is supporting and advancing learning and staying connected with our kids. We have teachers, some of you know this because you have kids that are receiving distance learning from us. We have teachers that are having regular meetings with all or some of the kids in their classrooms. We have teachers that start up at 8 a.m. and go until 4 p.m. and go into the evening, preparing lessons, but also staying connected with their kids and supporting their learning. It is really a remarkable feat. You might have heard me say before that if I would have started this year's back to school workshop with, we're going to be a distance learning school district in 2 years, our teachers would have walked out of the room. But then on March 15th, when we got this direction from the governor, we pivoted our system, transformed what we do in 2 weeks. One of those weeks was spring break. The resilience, determination, aptitude, ability, skill of our staff is really unimaginable. It's really impressive. So if you have a chance as a board to interact with teachers, give them a pat on the back. I've expressed your appreciation to them in many different ways. And if you have a chance, I know they would love to hear from you too. They are probably working harder than they ever have. I think that's safe to say. With that said, there are a number of things that are now in front of us that we need to think our way through. I've got a topic list in front of you. We'll do another walkthrough and review of our distance learning plan just to keep that information ahead of you, and our directors will help us through those different topics tonight. But the first on the list, and probably the topic you're getting the most questions around, is graduation and academic awards. Fortunately, we have Jim Caldwell, of course, high school principal Kelly Lafine at the community school with us tonight. There has been a great deal of innovative thinking around graduation. Hats off to Jim and Kelly and their teams, and quite honestly, city personnel and others that have weighed in and helped Jim and Kelly put a plan together. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim and Kelly and let them walk through the framework they are building around graduation. Jim, take it away.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Massey. Good evening, board. It's been a while since we've been able to talk, and this is the first time I think I've got to talk to you in a virtual environment. So it's exciting. And as Dr. Massey said, we're getting really good at this. What I'd like to share is a huge thank you to you guys. I've received lots of emails and forwarded messages and ideas that came from you guys as community members have talked to you. I have talked to probably 50 plus parents via email and phone conversations. I met with the senior student council members. I met with the bleacher captains, met with several faculty members, and of course have been in communication with other principals in the area. All with the goal of creating a graduation that gives us a little bit of the old, while being able to maintain that social distancing and following all of the CDC guidelines. Every single idea was looked at and investigated to see if we could do it. And it all came back to what can we do that's super, super cool, but yet maintain social distancing and following all of those guidelines. So then I came up with a concept, and I got Greg Weiss. He is the Forest Lake Emergency Manager. Also a captain of the Forest Lake Police Department. And I got Chief Newman together, and we sat down and we started looking really seriously at the ideas that Kelly and I and others had to see what can we really do. We started with parades. We went all the way through a drive-in graduation. We talked about the Naval Academy graduation. We talked about all of those. And what we came up with is this. The formal part of graduation that you guys have always participated in would be filmed on the stage, normal graduation stage, would be filmed with all of the speeches, special music, a faculty speaker, my message. national anthem being sung by members of our choir. We can't have the whole choir because we have to social distance them when they sing. Followed by the awarding of diplomas via virtual format with a slideshow where a name is read, picture pops up with their academic accolades that would be listed in the program. That will pop up. We'll run through all of the graduates just like we normally would. At the end of that, though, the families will be invited to the high school for a formal walk across the stage where they would receive their diploma. And what that looks like is one car per family would make their way to the Forest Lake High School, exit the south or enter the south parking lot by the tennis courts there, working with several different companies, the police department, fire department, and a company that does this for a living will map out what that path is so we can fit over 500 cars in line to receive their diplomas. They will snake around the bus lane to the front of the school where we are going to have a stage set up, a double-sided stage, okay, with a top on it. So we're going to be renting a tent to go over the top of that stage. That way, if it's raining, we can still do this. So if you envision those cars coming toward that stage, both two at a time, so we'll have two people graduate or getting their diploma at the same time. A car will park, student will get up and get into the on-deck circle, if you will, while that car pulls forward to the front of the stage. That student then will walk onto the stage, receive their diploma from either one of us or one of you. We'll work out all those details as we get closer, maintaining social distancing. They will walk off the stage, walk to their car, get in it, and leave. During this, you know, our normal graduation, Life Touch would be there taking pictures at all of these stages. Life Touch would still be there taking pictures for this as well. The bus lane will be decorated by members of our community. We have every one of our communities will be sending members of their fire department and police department to help with traffic control, but even a bigger support for our community and for the kids that went through there. So imagine we're going to have a fire rig from Columbus. We're going to have a fire rig from Linwood. We're going to have one from Scandia. We're going to have one from Hugo. Forest Lake Fire Department will be there. There will be a police representation from Washington County, Anoka County, Chisago County, Forest Lake Police Department, all being there to support our kids. So, I mean, it's just, we met today with the chief, the superintendent, Greg Weiss, Al Newman, and others to brainstorm what are the pluses, what are the minuses, what are we missing. And we came out of there, all of us, I think, very excited for what opportunity these kids are going to have to be able to walk across the stage. Kelly also has some things going on at the ALC. We should probably have her go first, and then we can take any questions.
And Jim, before we move there, talk about the actual date. We're looking at the actual scheduled graduation.
The actual date is going to be on June 5th. We would air the video probably earlier than normal, so we'd air that between 5 and 5:30. We're going to wait to roll that time out until we know exactly how long that video is going to be. We hope to start handing diplomas out by 6 or 6:30 at the latest. We're hoping that we can get everybody through in 2.5 to 3 hours. Which, if you think of a normal graduation, if we're outside, we have families that show up here at 2:30, 3 o'clock, saving their spots in their seats, and they spend a lot more time waiting for that to happen. We have contingencies in place for families that have joint parenting. They will get, just like normal, they'll have 2 tickets. They'll be able to have 2 cars. We've pretty much thought of everything that we would have for a normal graduation so everybody can participate. The other thing I forgot to mention is that event will be live streamed with the kids being announced as well. So imagine that if I'm coming through with my son, Grandma and Grandpa can't be there, I can get on the phone and call Grandma and Grandpa and say, look, I'm 2 cars away from the front. Get online. You can watch me walk across the stage, get my diploma. Kelly, I don't know if you want to jump on and give them an update.
Sure. We have a plan at the community school as well. Our celebration will take place on Wednesday, June 3rd, and we have approximately 26 graduates. Now, they are also invited, of course, as they are every year, to join the high school in that celebration, but we will do something similar where There will be a welcome speech. All of our staff members will be there to celebrate with our kids. They will be in cap and gown. They will be in their cars to receive their diploma. And also the staff is talking about doing gift bags for each individual student. So we always do something different and something special for our kids. And we're excited about it. The staff is pumped and they're starting to send their videos on wishing the students well. So we're excited about that.
I would just add from the high school side as well, the other event that we're missing is that event on Monday night, the academic awards night. There is no way, after looking at everything, that we can pull that off in a similar fashion with kids coming to school. Many of our scholarship groups have been delayed in awarding their scholarships because the people on these boards are bankers and things like that, and they have just been hammered with loan applications for COVID relief and those types of things. What we plan on doing there is creating a similar slideshow that will name the student, where they're going to college, which scholarships they will be receiving. So that will be published on the same night that the awards banquet or show would have been. They're also going to get a very nice letter written with their certificates mailed to them at home. So that's how we're covering that one.
There's an opportunity with this celebration to engage the community as a whole. And I know Renee's just in the early stages of thinking about those pieces. Renee, anything you'd add there?
Sorry, I had to unmute myself. No, I wouldn't add, well, I guess what I would say is that I'm talking about, it would have to be something that keeps people home, at least under current guidelines. So we wouldn't want to arrange any type of parade that would bring people to gather, on main thoroughfares or whatnot. But if you have a graduate in your neighborhood and you want to stand out in your front yard and wave them and wish them good luck as they head toward the high school, that type of thing would be great. And we may start talking about some signs of support you could do in your house or in your window, close to graduation, that we could get them involved. Because it is, a lot of people in the community are really thinking about our graduates, and I think they would really like to get involved.
So, Jeff, I'll turn it back to you if you want to entertain or facilitate a discussion or conversation or questions.
Okay.
I have either way. I have a couple quick ones. First, it sounds like the most awesome plan I've heard from anybody. I've been asking for weeks what other places are doing and things like that. And this sounds like it really suits a really big class. And everybody. Three. How are we going to make them all stay in their cars because they haven't seen their friends in a month, and they'll be snaking along behind somebody and in front of somebody. Second, do they get to throw their hats in the air, which is awesome. And maybe if they're all snaking in a parade route, like you can do a countdown and everyone throw it and the drone can take a picture. And can we use the drone to take an aerial shot of some of these things?
We do have the drone on a list to have the drone up and be taking shots and things, so we can put that out. The throwing of the hats, remember that is after you receive your diplomas that we do that. There's really no good way to do that because kids will be getting in their cars and then they'll be driving away. But what we are planning on doing, and this is all dependent on next fall, is throwing a huge tailgate party at one of our home football games, or if we have to wait till a basketball game, doing something there as well, where we can invite the class of 2020 back, have a huge tailgate celebrating them, announce their names again in the first half of the football game or basketball game, and then invite them all down on the field with their caps and let them have that opportunity at that point. We did talk about that as well. Did you have one other question? Oh, getting out of the cars. in working with Greg, with Captain Weiss and Chief Peterson, we are going to have many law enforcement in place. We'll also have staff members, which families will know, and things like that. We know we're going to have kids that want to get out and have that picture taken because they're going to see their friends, some of them for the first time. And we'll just very nicely walk over and remind them that, we have to maintain social distancing. We know in our heart of hearts, there are families currently right now that are getting together outside of school. There's groups of friends that are getting together. Some of these kids are going to go find their own places to take pictures off of school grounds. And I think we have to be comfortable with the fact that we can only control what goes on the Forest Lake area schools property, and families do have a choice. And if they choose to go get pictures or whatever off of school grounds, that's their right.
We know that there are some families that don't have a car. So Jim's going to be developing a list of folks that want to volunteer and make sure those kids and even their families have a chance to be part of the procession.
Member Olson?
Yes, I assume walking the stage will be optional if families are not comfortable coming. Is that correct?
That messaging, Jill, that's a very good point. That messaging will be out that, the formal graduation is the virtual graduation, and coming to the school, although and all that is an optional experience. And if you are not comfortable doing that, by all means, there is no reason that you have to participate.
Love the ideas. I'm excited. I want to be a part of it, however that plays out. Thanks, Jim.
Thank you.
Thanks. I had a question. I'm a little bit concerned about the timing of starting at 6:30 for what is essentially a traffic jam, a controlled traffic jam. Is that going to be enough time, or is it going to get? I'm worried that if it went long, it would get dark, and then be a little harder because we don't have the kind of lighting that we would need to really make it look good. Thoughts?
The front of the school will be lit up appropriately, so there'll be the right amount of light. We have our parking lot lights that will provide enough light there. We're also going to be bringing in lights, so the bus lane will be lit at the appropriate level for that as well. The engineers that are working on the design for this line in the back are very confident that we can fit well over 500 cars in a specific pattern in the back parking lot. And I apologize, I cannot remember the name of the company, but they are donating all of their services to the developing of the path that the cars will travel. They're donating all of the signage, they're donating all of the cones, and they're donating their time to set this whole thing up. It's incredible.
Also, part of the logistics, they're planning to shut down Goodview so that once you get onto Goodview, you're off of city traffic and hopefully not snarling up traffic. And the flow out of the high school will be gradual enough where the exit's not going to snarl up traffic.
This is Julie. I just have a quick question regarding school board's role. Oh my gosh. Well, that was weird. I'm just exploded around here. Just checking on the role of school board for will be on stage, or I guess I'm not sure. I didn't understand.
The role of the school board is really what you guys want to do. The handing out of the diplomas is something the school board has traditionally done. But I also don't want to require you guys to do anything that you're not comfortable with. We will have the stage marked out appropriately, and we'll teach people how to hand out those diplomas so you can stay socially distanced. We have protective equipment ready with gloves and things like that for the people that will be on stage. But really, that's a conversation for Dr. Massey and us to have with you, whether it's here or someplace else, and what is your comfortableness level of participation. It's also going to take a lot longer. Normally we do this in about 45 minutes, and you're talking about 3 hours. So we'll have to rotate people through either way, but we're not going to have you guys do anything you're not comfortable with, but we would love your participation in that part of the event.
Yeah, at the very least, you can be present and waving at kids and families as they come through. I'm not sure exactly how the handoff of the diploma is going to be, whether that's set on a table and the kid picks it up from there. Those are some logistics that need to be determined, but it'll be your comfort level that drives that.
So Jim, great work. That is a fabulous, the whole thing just comes together great. And I want to thank you for capturing what we traditionally do as a school. And I think as kids look back on this 2020 graduation that just became so pandemic oriented, they'll have a similar experience than their sibling or somebody. So thank you for thinking of all of that. One question I want to quick circle back to is, you talked about your speech. Are there going to be student speakers?
Everything that always happens at graduation is going to be the same. I mean, I will get up. We're going to do pomp and circumstance with the students flashing up on the screen as though they're walking. Once that is done, I will get up and do my normal welcome, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the national anthem. I'll do my little welcome speech. Then we'll do the 3 student speeches. We have a faculty speaker that will be speaking. And then we will end with the awarding of the diplomas, which we will go through on the virtual format and then end with inviting people to the high school. The families will know this ahead of time. We're anticipating people starting to line up much earlier than when we start handing them out, because, I mean, they'll do just like some people are doing now, and they'll be able to watch it on their phones sitting in their car. So we have all of those contingency plans laid out as well. But
Well, again, great work. And I think that all the plans that were swirling around out there and getting approached about them, I think we've come up with one that's just like way up there. This will be an awesome evening for them. And I'm very excited. And the signs came out today from Forest Lake Printing.
they did.
So I have mine up and I've seen a few more. So any way we can participate and make it special for them, I'm just more than willing. So great work, Kelly. And Jim.
Yeah, thank you all, and I appreciate all your support.
Real quick, Jim, this is Julie again. I just wanted to echo Gail's comments. I mean, I know how much time and effort you put into this to make it special for our kids, and it's gonna be something they'll never forget. That's for sure. So it's gonna be something very different, something that, it's just kind of like the Blizzard prom that, that my kids have that they still talk about. So, but thank you for all your hard work and all the hours and planning that your team has put in. I'm sure it's been a lot, but it's gonna be memorable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This is Alex. I just want to echo everybody's comments, but I'd like to say a couple things. One is I was very impressed with the video that came out. I thought that was just outstanding. That is the best ever. I love the whole idea of this graduation. Definitely I'll participate in one way or another as best I can, however that is. So thank you for all the hard work you did. It's great. And I'd like to continue to make sure that we follow through on the idea of having a celebration somewhere down the road, whether it be at a football game or basketball game or wherever it is. I think that's just a great idea, Jim. So nice work. Unbelievable. Outstanding. I'll be there all the way. This makes me really happy. Thanks.
Good. Thank you, guys.
A quick one, and this is more for Dr. Massey. Are the individual principals doing their own thing or something altogether for 6th graders? I know it's like small potatoes next to 12th grade graduation, but just worth something happening?
That's a really good question. I don't know the answer to that. I know that they're thinking about those kind of things. I will put that on our Tuesday agenda and get a sense of what they're thinking there, and I'll get back to the board on that.
Okay. And then I think just in the mix of everything, I didn't hear a peep about prom, and maybe it's my echo chamber. I didn't hear anything about prom. It's obviously passed and it's not going to happen like normal, but is there, and it's not on our agenda tonight, so I don't want to steal time, but is there any word on that, or has everyone just let it go?
Right now, Kate, I think pretty much everybody has let it go. We put out last Friday that it was actually officially canceled after the governor's new executive order. I think pretty much everybody has just come to the conclusion that there is really no way to do a prom this year. And it's one of those things, just like when we talked about not postponing graduation, the farther we get away from the school year, the farther we get away from prom season, it loses its luster. And at some point it becomes next year's group that wants to do the prom. So people have resigned to that. They want to get together just like we all want to get together, and they're very anxious, waiting to get that opportunity. I just think that they know that water's gone under the bridge and it's not going to come back.
Yeah, I guess if there's a compliment stream, I'm really proud of everyone who did not pitch a fit.
Oh, I agree.
I've heard nothing. And I'm not in the same zone, but it's been really impressive that they just sort of let that one go.
The amount of understanding and patience and grace that our community has showed the high school as we've made this transition and planned things like graduation it's outstanding. I mean, hats off to our entire community, our staff. This is not about Jim Caldwell and my staff. This is about the community and our teachers and the relationships we have. That's why this has gone as smooth as it has. And it's not perfect. I mean, things that we're going to talk about tonight, we're still making tweaks and we're doing the best that we can for the kids.
All right, if that answers all the questions, I'm going to move us along so we keep working our way through the agenda. The next topic is related to distance learning. We have spent quite a bit of time on this in previous meetings. So unless there are specific questions, we're going to take a little bit of a different angle and touch base on some different dimensions related to distance learning that we haven't touched on thus far. If there are questions that this stirs up, of course, we'll dive into those. But we thought we'd look at the tools we're using and how those might move us forward. We're going to talk about how we're addressing grading concerns and grading related issues, the focus on core subjects versus all subjects, and how we're meeting the needs of kids that are out there that may not be fully engaged. So with that, Diane, you want to take it away?
Sure. I had spoken a little bit briefly when we chatted just broadly around distance learning about the fact that we have this learning management system at the secondary level. That has been a game changer for us for grades 7 through 12. We actually did the exploration around it last year as we started thinking about possibly applying to MDE to become a supplemental provider for online learning, in which case we knew that we would need a learning management system. So we made the selection last spring and then prepared to have our educators get up and running with it this fall, with the idea that we would expect all of our 7-12 educators to be fully into it by the end of this year so that they could plan to be using it with their students in all their courses beginning next year. And then COVID-19 happened. And suddenly our educators were thrown into it a little bit more quickly than they had intended. And it really has been helpful at the secondary level. In part, what it does for our families is that there's one system that is the go-to system for any student in grades 7 through 12. So if a family does have a couple students that might be in different grades, they know that the teachers are using the same system. I would say that our educators have moved into it very quickly with with this shift to distance learning. Some of them maybe aren't quite as fully versed in it yet as they will be by next year, but they are making great gains. So that has really been helpful for us at that level to try to provide that consistency and be able to have a way to share learning activities and expectations in a digital means. At the elementary level, we really had not planned for this, and to this point, we have not had conversations around a consistent platform. So we really see a little bit of the wild, wild west there. We have educators who have been into certain tools in the past and have been able to leverage that. Others who hadn't dug into it at all and are trying to get up to speed quickly with whatever one they think is kind of a go-to one for them, whether it's because a colleague told them about it or because instructional coach is able to support them in it. So what we're seeing in many of our 4th through 6th grade classrooms is that many of them are going towards Google Classroom. And Google Classroom is a really nice fit because it integrates fully, obviously, with the Google suite that our students have access to already. We don't have all of our 4th through 6th grade classrooms in Google Classroom, but the majority of them, if they're using a digital tool, are using that. For other tools that are happening at the elementary level, it's probably Seesaw and Class Dojo are the two that we're seeing most frequently. Class Dojo tends to be in some of the more primary grades, and then Seesaw anywhere from primary to middle elementary. So we really have had some conversations about starting a plan going forward that we likely need to do some kind of an exploration, similar to what 712 did, and come up with what will our consistent tools be that we will all use district-wide. And not to say that we will fully be into this kind of a format still next year, but we do know that we're not yet sure what it's going to look like, and that we do need to be prepared to be able to have some digital tools to lean on. In addition to the fact that as we talk about e-learning days, that's another time when we might be, it might be beneficial for us to have digital tools to be able to lean on to some degree. So those are the tools that we're using at those levels. And as I mentioned, at elementary, it's not consistent, and our plan is to move toward consistency as we look toward next year.
Diane, if I can jump in, there's a critical thing you started with that, we were thrusted into this in the middle of March, and fortunately we had Canvas 712 ready to go. Some staff were just more than ready to run with that. Others were just dabbling, but we had a platform. We were caught without a platform at the elementary, like most school districts across the state, quite honestly. Given that background, still teachers have found a platform that works for them, and they're being effective with their learning. It does create perhaps different platforms for one student versus another in the same household. We understand that. We're trying to be empathetic with that and support that. But that is our reality. And rather than inventing or throwing a new tool at elementary teachers on the fly when they were trying to build lessons, we didn't feel that would be fair.
So can I clarify one question, Diane?
Yes.
So are you thinking a consistent tool might be used then in the fall of 2020?
And one that we would agree on, so that for those pieces that we do choose to offer digitally to students, we would all be using the same tool for those grade levels. I don't anticipate that we would see grade levels doing full digital learning at the elementary level in the way that we are doing right now because of distance learning. But we did have several teachers who were already leveraging Google Classroom with their own classroom of students, just partly through what they were doing in the classroom, or maybe as a way for them to access digital tools as part of their homework activities. So just wanting to make sure that whatever digital means the teachers do choose to use, it's going to be consistent, not only across within one building, but across the entire district by grade level. And as I said, it's very possible that we might think there's one tool that's very appropriate for K2 and a different one for 3-6 or wherever that divide is. That certainly might be the case, but just wanting that consistency in part to help families so that they have some more consistency as their students move up through the grades, but also to be able to build that collegiality among our educators where they can lean on each other a little bit as they figure things out and support each other in the resources they're finding.
Thank you.
Diane, I don't know what Canvas looks like. What is it most similar to?
When we looked at Canvas as part of our learning management system exploration, it was really between Canvas and another tool called Schoology. Canvas gives you an opportunity to really build from the bottom up what your courses look like. It lets you curate resources from all over the web or wherever you have it in Google. It integrates with all those tools. It's an extremely flexible platform. So that is in large part why our secondary educators chose to go with Canvas over some other options, because of the flexibility down the road. It's got a little bit more learning curve on the front end for educators in developing their courses, but it gives them that ability to really make the course be manageable for students and have all the pieces that they would like to include. One thing that we may talk about is that possibly 5th and 6th grade would work well with Canvas. And we had some conversations about that initially, that it might be that some of our upper elementary students would do well with that. So that's probably one we would at least explore. But it would be probably not the best layout for some of our younger students.
Well, we made a good choice picking that Canvas because Schoolology, didn't it crash for many districts like the first week or two? So kudos to our smart staff and you as well for having Canvas. And I did want to say, how low down into the elementary can you go with Canvas?
You know, for me, as I'm thinking about how students learn, I don't know that I'd go below 4th grade for Canvas. So if our 4th through 6th grade teachers looked at Canvas and felt like it was a good fit for them, I could certainly see that being the tool. And then we're providing that consistent platform from 4th grade all the way through 12th grade. But I don't know that it's a good fit below that. And as it is, we have so many of our educators in the upper elementary using Google Classroom at the time. And that's a very comfortable tool for students to use as well. That might be the direction we go. We will pull a group together with representatives from grade levels and from different buildings to be sure we're hearing voices from all different perspectives as we start to look at what the tools might be that we want to land on.
Diane, this is Julie. I had a question. Have you heard from any of the staff, especially in the elementary level, of maybe the students and parents not engaging in the online resources? I've heard a couple teachers say they have some students, and I don't know how do we fix that, or going forward, do the teachers report that to their principal, and then does it come up to you, or how going on with that?
That is definitely a consideration. I'm glad you brought that up because our focus for ensuring that there's digital access started with our secondary students. And for those who may not have had Wi-Fi at home, Dr. Massey worked with TEFLA and Rangers Supporting Rangers to build that partnership to help provide access for those families. In some cases, I believe that even at that level, there was some reticence about whether or not they really wanted to go in that digital format. At the elementary level, I would say we obviously haven't been able to provide for all of those students. We did make devices available for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, starting from 6th grade down, depending on how many devices we had available. But there are some who really have chosen not to go the digital route, even if they had access. And I can think specifically of Neil sharing that one family just prefers to have the packets and that works better for their child. So it's true that especially at the elementary, there might be different choices made about what the learning activities are that work best for their child.
And Julie, this week we spent some time administratively populating a spreadsheet school by school with kids that teachers and administrators feel are not engaged, connected, or that we're not reaching. By putting a name on a sheet, on a document, and identifying what the challenges might be and what our response should be holds us accountable. So we're now at that stage of quantifying who is it that we're not reaching. And then we're building out game plans to enlist counselors, school psychologists, paras. We're pulling out the resources to chase those kids down. If you think about a teacher who's reaching out and not connecting with the student, they've got 19, 20 some other kids that they're building lessons for, and we'll bring the resources in behind that teacher to help reach out to that student.
So given that, Steve, do we have a number?
We actually, Jim, what is your number at the high school?
Right now, we're at about 37 confirmed kids that have gone dark at one point or another. That number ebbs and flows a little bit as we make contact with families, and our EL staff gets a hold of families, and we get hotspots in their hands and things like that. But that number is gonna ebb and flow as kids go through the peaks and the valleys. And I think right now we're in one of those peaks. At least at the high school, I think, as Dr. Massey started the meeting, getting the news, even though we knew it was coming, was a big punch in the gut. Well, that was a big punch in the gut to our students as well. And we're back in that little transition time when kids are really having to gear back up for the long haul, saying, I got to get this done now. And we're doing a lot of work on that. So that number is going to ebb and flow. The spreadsheet, though, idea that Dr. Massey came up with is critical, because now we can look across buildings and see if we have families that are totally disengaged and get the right resources there.
Think about Carolyn Latati and her work with homeless kids and family support. She then can tap into that document and identify that it might be a homeless student or a device issue that we didn't know before. Maybe it's a food and a resource issue. So we then can muster and rally the supports that kids need.
And I think like that,
the high school with 30 kids out of 2,000. While 30 kids are kids we need to go get. It's not hundreds. And that's a tribute to the team and the teachers that are working through the system for those kids. Go ahead, Kelly. Sorry about that.
no, I'm sorry. I'm just like, I'm in Scandia, as everybody knows, so our internet is in and out. But anyway, I think like Dr. Massey said, the goal is to establish continue those relationships with our kids. And so we do have our Canvas Health people and our chemical health people still working virtually with our kids, our equity groups, our PBIS groups, student leadership groups at the community school, working with our kids. And we have something similar, and I think all of our secondary buildings have the same. It's a Google spreadsheet that we update daily. And our goal is to make sure that nobody falls between the cracks. So hats off to our therapists and our student leadership teachers who are continuing to connect with those kids on a weekly basis. But I know that all buildings, that's our goal, is to continue those relationships, because they want to see our faces, they want to hear our voices, and that's how they're going to get through this. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, and the number is 10 or less at each of the elementaries.
Member Luth?
That's a low number.
Luther, did you have something to add?
I do. And it's a quick one. In the first session, when we talked about attendance, I heard that if a kid turns in their work by the end of the week, it counts as 5 days of attendance. Is that still true? They don't need to be clicking online once a day or by a certain time to count for the day?
That is how we are looking at it at the elementary. And really the educators are looking more broadly than just whether or not the work was turned in. It's about contact and connection. So if a child has been participating in an online activity, or if they have had a phone conversation, that's all counted as present and participating.
Okay. I know one of the teacher the least liked things right now is when they have to update attendance 45 times a day as a new kid pops on. So I'm glad we're not doing that, at least for half the teachers.
Yeah, at the elementary, we're doing it that way. Secondary, they're really doing their attendance the following day. So they, on that day, are marking attendance based on participation or work completed the previous day. But then also they're doing a look back about every 5 days that if something was turned in, that they had marked that particular student absent because they weren't seeing the work yet, then they'll go back and change that. So trying to give a lot of flexibility and breathing room for the students.
And I also have noticed I noticed quite a few more high school students at work in the day. So there's people picking up Walmart shifts, and maybe they're doing it because they need to, or maybe they're doing it because they're bored. But just, I've seen people I absolutely know are in high school I'm now seeing in the daytime.
Well, the beauty of distance learning is you can do your work at night, provided you're not missing a live chat with your teacher. As much as there's flexibility around attendance, there's a lot of grace that we're needing to consider around grading. It's different, and some kids thrive in this environment, some kids don't. Some kids that would be earning high grades in the classroom or might be struggling, or vice versa. So we're trying to be flexible with grading. Diane, you want to talk about that a little bit as well?
Diane, before you go, Member Tyson had something she wanted to add on that.
Thank you. I'm sorry, and then I will stop. Kelly, can I circle back to you? I have had a couple of parents from the high school talk to me about wanting a one-on-one with their mental health counselor instead of the phone call. Do you see that maybe down the road happening as kind of some of the restrictions lessen? That if they just have the same counselor, could they see them one-on-one?
So we have, at the community school, we have Zach, and there's a mental health counselor in all the secondary buildings, but they can come in if they social distance themselves and see the counselor one-on-one. That's true with teachers as well. If there's a student that struggles, they can come in and see their teacher one-on-one if they social distance. So right now we had a couple of students that came in to see Zach a couple of days ago. So that's an option. Absolutely.
And Gail, at the high school, our Audrey is our Canvas Health person, and she has been seeing students in parks and all over the place, one-on-one, of course, social distancing, trying to get away from the phone health system and counseling over the telephone. So she's done a great job keeping those relationships. She's booked right now. She can't even take any more patients.
Oh, that's good to know.
Yep.
Evidently, the parents don't know that, so that's great.
All right. Sorry, Diane.
Yeah, that's just fine. On the topic of grading then, and it actually ties into that learning focus just previous to that as well. At the elementary, we have gone with pass and no grade for all of the elementary subject areas, just feeling like we really want to work on moving learning forward, but building and maintaining relationships. Those are our two key pieces. We don't want to get down to the points and worrying about whether or not a particular student has all the points from a particular week or a particular assignment. So we felt that the pass and no grade gave that flexibility for students to maybe lower their level of concern, as well as families who are trying to support them, and yet still with the idea that we'll try to work with them to move their learning forward on that. The elementary learning focus areas really are literacy, math, science, and social studies. We had some conversation initially about how specialists would fit into that, and they have been putting learning activities into whatever format the classroom teachers are building. But we got some feedback from some families just feeling like it was really a lot to be thinking about all those different areas. So our specialists have been amazing with adjusting the way that they're laying out the learning activities and making them really be more an optional activity, or here's something to think about, or here's something you might try if you have a moment, but there will be no grade for specialists. So for the elementary content areas, it'll be pass, no grade, but specialists will just literally give no grade at the elementary level, just to try to, again, make it be more about providing enriching activities for students if they are willing and have the time, but no expectation if they can't get to it. At the middle school as well, it's we're going with the pass, no grade choices. And then the high school was going with letter grades, but has just begun exploring pass, no grade based on looking at what's been working for students and trying to best support them in their learning. So knowing that some of our students actually do want that letter grade, especially if they're feeling like they're being quite successful, they will have an opt-in option for a letter grade at the high school level. And otherwise, pass, no grade will be the letter grade that will be the default if they don't choose to opt into letter grades.
Does anybody have any questions regarding grading?
I just have a quick question regarding grading, Jeff. So Diane, when do the students have to decide about their grading? Because I know, like my son at the U is actually gets to go the whole class, the whole semester, and then decide once he sees how he did. Is that going to be the way it is at the high school also? Or when do they have to decide?
And that discussion is just underway. Maybe I'll let Jim speak to that.
We are thinking that this could go all the way up to close to the end of the year. Obviously, there has to be a decision point. And we're super excited. We're just now having conversations with staff about this. I've talked to a lot of parents about it, so it's not like this, we're absolutely doing it and this is the this is what's going to happen. But the concept is, yes, a student could opt for a grade all the way up until that last part of the quarter.
Thank you.
You might be curious, do we have the ability to modify grading on the fly? We certainly do. We have school board policy around credit requirements. We do not have specific school board policy around how we grade. So that gives us some flexibility. It is important that as a board, you're comfortable with the direction we're going here. And then ultimately, the obligation we have is to make sure kids are well informed about their options and so that they can make the best choice moving forward. And of course, we'd communicate that with parents as well. If there aren't other questions related to grading, Kate?
Mine was just, I'd like us to be on with the majority of the country with whatever happens with grading, especially for 12th grade or 11th grade going in, because if people are looking at colleges, every college is going to understand 2020. But I don't really feel that we're doing anyone favors by not giving grades if 90% were giving grades. They're like, well, I guess these schools in Minnesota decided not to give grades. But I'm sure there's something MDE or a national level of what people are deciding. And that would be my hope as a board member, to be keeping with the majority of the country. And when there's an option, almost going for more rigor rather than less. So they're like, oh, Minnesota, yeah, they made the harder choice. Those kids know what they're doing. Because they still need to do the next thing, whatever that might be.
I do know that MDE is providing guidance on this in the next week or so. So some of the early indications to us is that the pass-fail is an option. It's utilized by many schools in our conference and across the state. And giving kids at that upper level that choice is really critical. There are some kids that have 4.0s or close to it, and they don't want to pass, and we would provide that option for those kids. We also have kids looking at NCAA requirements and moving on for collegiate sports or scholarships. We need to take all those things into consideration.
And when we do pass no grade for those students who don't choose to opt into the letter grades, that does not have an impact on their GPA. So their GPA would remain as it is up to the point of whether it was third quarter or second quarter, depending on where that cut point was. Actually, third quarter, because we went with letter grades through that point. So they will still have a GPA, even if they choose to allow the shift to pass no grade for their final quarter.
So do you mean that their GPA is based on like March 6th or March 15th when school? Is that what you mean by third quarter in school?
The current transcripts for our seniors that are in Parchment right now are accurate GPAs up through the end of quarter 3. As those transcripts will be updated at the end of quarter 4, anybody who opts for a grade, their GPA will change slightly. If you opt for a pass or a no grade, your GPA will be exactly the same as it was at the end of quarter 3.
So a smart kid with a 4.0 would sit pretty.
Yeah, right. You also have the opposite end where we have kids that are excelling in this situation where normally they'd be getting C's and D's, and right now they're getting A's and B's. That student, by opting in, would be excelling in the opposite direction.
Right. So people who like to game systems have a good opportunity now.
Right. And I've heard more from parents saying, whatever you do, don't take a grade away from my straight A student, as opposed to, boy, get me to pass fail. It's been the exact opposite.
Yeah. And I know every college is going to be understanding, I'm pretty sure, but I'd rather be in the top half of they did more than they needed to rather than they did less than they needed to as a district and state and region. I mean, we're not just us, we're Midwest, we're United States. So
All right, so if there aren't more questions there, down to the next topic, which is related to services. And we talked already a little bit around the spreadsheet that we've created and we're working off of. I've listed the different services that kids need and we're providing on a regular basis, from special ed to English language services. We've talked about mental health and the homeless service. So we don't want to get too much back into that work, as we talked about that before, but we want to make sure you're comfortable with how those pieces are working out. Kelly, do you want to touch base a little bit on the special ed side?
Yep. Good evening, everybody on the board. Just a quick update for special ed. On April 13th, we met with all of the special education teachers. We waited until we got secure guidance from MDE on what we were supposed to be doing with each student's IEP. We were given different messages, so we waited a bit, and then on April 13th, when we had the PD day, we guided all the special education teachers to coordinate with their families, and they now need to write an individual distance learning plan. So that plan had to be written specific to the students on what would be happening during distance learning time. So we gave them about a week and a half, and each case manager reached out to everybody on their caseload, which ranges from 5 to 22, 23, 24 families, to talk about what distance learning looks like for their special ed services, and then to write individual distance learning plan for each student. Then that plan is placed in their special ed cumulative file. That's how the staff are providing the services, along with, or as long as we're in distance learning. At the point that we are said that we're going back into school, the IDLP is no longer, it's just a part of their folder. And then then we jump back into the IEP services. So some families are choosing in that service that they may not want some of their related services during distance learning time. It's just too overwhelming. So it's really a conversation with the family of what are their needs, what are their family needs, what are their student needs, and then how do we support them, in an individual plan was written. So we have about over 1,050 students on an IEP. So we reached out to a lot of students and their families to get those individual learning plans written. Along with that, we have our paraprofessional staff supporting the teachers, helping them with preparation of materials, distribution of materials, as well as doing some resource room and reaching out to families and helping to do those virtual meetings. And so that has been going very well. We've gotten some great videos, and actually today I've gotten some great text messages from teachers that are distance. They met their students at a playground, kept distance, but some of our more significant students are really having a hard time processing what happened, how school ended abruptly. And I don't get why I don't get to see my teacher right now. It's not summer vacation. So when you have some rigid routines and your routine is broken, that's been some challenging. So teachers have been really trying to figure out how, with themselves or with paraprofessionals, to reach out to the families and the students to help them process through the change, because it just doesn't make sense. Along with that, and Corey will get into it, so I won't go far, but then our paraprofessional staff have also supported our childcare for essential workers, as well as some teaching staff. So we always have a licensed teacher on staff for the time that's essential workers' children are at childcare. So that is special ed in a nutshell. Do you have any questions specific to that agenda item for special ed?
I have one question, Kelly. So those individual distance learning plans, do they, as long as we're doing distance learning, they'll be creating those?
Yep.
And how long are those? Are they as long as an IEP, or are they more condensed?
They're more condensed. They're about a 1 to 2 page, depending on what services will be provided. They're written to say that during distance learning, we will provide X, Y, and Z. and then what that looks like, whether it's over the phone, if it's more of a Zoom or a Google Hangout. If it's one time a week, I want you to check in. I want you to send me the materials, and then I'll check in with you in another week. Some teachers are making daily contact and having 30-minute sessions with their students. So it's really tailored to the students, but is kind of a one-page summary, but still targeting the goals and objectives that are in the larger document of the IEP.
Our special ed families doing? I think of them often. The challenges have got to be great, and I know they get such excellent service through our programming, but can you comment on how they're doing?
There's been some families that are doing great. I was on I actually had an IEP meeting this morning of a family of a young man, and it was great to see him. He had learned to do some cooling and rolling that wasn't typical. So it was, how do we get the physical therapist engaged, because now he's mastered going down the stairs, but he wants to go up. So, there's still progress that's being made, but how do we reach out to the right people? And so staff are doing their best. And, some of our families also have students with multiple disabilities or multiple students with disabilities. And I think that they have reached out some of challenges. We've also used Jill Kraut-Kramer with the behavior supports to reach out to families and help with some strategies and do some over the phone conversations, and try to help with some of the behavior needs.
Thank you.
Chiming in, one of the big things that people are talking about is it's illegal and my IEP is being violated. Not so many in our district, but it's something I've definitely heard from a lot of parents that it's illegal to not, and all the things. So are we CYA across the board?
Yes, that's what the IDLP is really about, is to meet with the families and say, what do you need and what do you want right now in distance learning, because it does look different. And then that is our document to say, here is what we are providing, because it varies across the board, from parents who want every minute to other parents that are saying, I am completely overwhelmed, and right now I need you to check in with me once a week. Because we have to remember that special ed, the students with disabilities are general ed first. So many of them are getting their general ed curriculum, and then to get things on top of it is a lot. So it's that balance. And I would say that the special ed staff have done a great job with the general ed teachers to really help that balance. We've also had a couple kids who have entered into treatment, because treatments are still open, mental health treatment. And so we've had to work with the general ed teachers to reduce their academic load, because they are in half-day programs for mental health.
And then, so CYA is my minimum bar, and I'm really glad we're meeting and exceeding that. Are there any very unhappy people? I'm glad there's many happy people, but is there something down the line that just we need to be aware of, that someone is very unhappy?
I wish I could predict that, because sometimes we're always blindsided, but I'd have to say at this point, I have not met with or talked to any parents who's significantly unhappy. And I've met with one teacher who is working with right now a parent who's trying to navigate and just uncertain. But the complaint process through MDE is still there, facilitated IEPs, mediation, and the full complaint process. And I do know some other directors who have gotten complaints through this process, and I can say at this point, we have none.
Yay!
So.
Thanks, Kelly. That was great news.
Are there any other questions? Steve, I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Diane. Updates on EL beyond what we've discussed earlier?
Yeah, for our English learners, our EL teachers are still doing check-ins, and they're finding about twice a week is working pretty well for students and families. Some have requested to check in more regularly. Some maybe a little bit less than that. They're really being responsive to the student and parents' needs. They have at times provided actual live lessons through Meet or whatever digital means they're able to when that's possible with the student. And then they've been really helpful with the families, the students, and even with our classroom teachers in connecting with Language Line and helping with translation support for communication with the families, and also for the learning activities that our family or that our educators are sending home. So they have been very busy and very connected with their students, and it seems like right now they're feeling like they're doing pretty well, keeping on top of most of those students and being able to stay well connected with families and EL students.
We've already talked about mental health, so I'll jump over that unless there are questions. You might be aware that we have close to 80 students that would consider themselves homeless. And that would be families, kids who are living on a couch in somebody else's house or in a shelter. So that is a real challenge, as you can imagine, supporting teachers reaching those kids who move around quite a bit or are unplugged. Carolyn Latati has been an enormous resource there. Brad Ward is working hard along with her in that area. We're providing devices, technology access. If a student is living in, let's say, Lakeville, but considered one of our kids during the school year, we're providing transportation for that student to get to us. In some ways, if they have a device and internet, they're plugged in, which is very helpful. They can get meals in Lakeville. They don't have to come to Forest Lake to get meals. They can get meals through food service in the district that's closest to them. So we're making it work. We have those kids largely plugged in. Some are doing extremely well. Some are limping along, and we're rallying supports around those kids. We have a few kids unplugged that we're working hard to connect with. May 1st and May 4th were identified as transition days to bring kids back into our schools when distance learning started. And now that distance learning has been extended to the end of the year, May 1 and May 4 have been transitioned to preparation days, professional development days for teachers. They are not instructional days. We are not providing learning for students on those 2 days. And Diane has been working with her team to develop professional development opportunities for teachers. Diane?
Yeah, it started with our instructional coaching team developing opportunities for professional development for our educators in district, and they keep all of these in the same document. The document is linked from our curriculum website where educators know to go for some of those resources, and these have been offered all along the way through distance learning. Once it was apparent that distance learning would be extended through the end of the year, we also reached out to our peer coaches, our academic support specialists, our media innovation specialists, all of them who have been providing PD and support for educators, to also add to that PD document. And we have quite a few offerings available just from within our own district teacher leaders for tomorrow and Monday as part of these planning days. We fully recognize, however, that these days are for our educators to think about what do they need in order to provide what is needed for their students in continuing distance learning. That might include them learning something new, looking at a new strategy, but it might be about just working with their colleagues in collaboration to plan those next units of study. So these teacher leaders are being very flexible in how they're offering these professional development sessions. They're recording all of them as well and putting them on the same document so that they are available for future access for those students or those educators who may not have been able to access them on Friday or Monday. Also, the Minnesota Distance Learning Summit is occurring virtually, and that was shifted to take place tomorrow and Monday as well. So there are a lot of opportunities there. Those are ed tech leaders who are putting together professional learning opportunities for educators. But as you look at the list of opportunities, many of them are not about digital tools at all. They're about analog learning and how do you think about that in distance learning time. Minnesota Department of Education also created several professional development sessions for tomorrow and Monday around relationship building and maintaining relationships. So our educators have links to all of that. They pretty much can pick and choose over the next couple of days if there are opportunities that look like they would be a good fit for them. All of these will be recorded for future access to be able to continue supporting the educators. So these 2 days are really about them thinking about how they can best continue in a way that will be beneficial for students to move learning forward, but still maintaining and building relationships with their students.
Moving us along, we had 41 kids in childcare today, and that's, we've been averaging in the upper 30s or so in our 2 sites. Corey?
Yeah, this report will be relatively brief. There's not a whole lot that's transitioned. If you recall from where we were in the last month providing childcare for families of emergency workers, we built a system that allowed for registration and transportation, meals to be provided up through May 4th, knowing that distance learning and school closure period, prior to the governor's announcement last week, ran through May 4th. Once the announcement came out that we were extending through this rest of the school year, then it was fairly simple now that we had the platforms in place to extend the registration, to extend the transportation options. We are seeing an uptick in the enrollment in our child care program, and that could be for a variety of reasons. Where, like Dr. Massey mentioned, we're averaging it, depending upon the day, anywhere between 30 to 40 kids at both sites combined. We're at Forest View in Wyoming. The child care is for family emergency workers, the Tier 1 list only. It's free during the course of the school day on days that school would regularly be in session. We have the extended, the before and after school option, as well as non-school day option in the fee-based format. And we are going forward with May 1 and May 4 as though they were student days for the for families. So if they were planning on coming to childcare in the free-based and free format, they're going to have that same option, no different than if it would have been a regular school day for them. So our staff have done an amazing job. They've been out at both sites a few different times, and getting kids together at a time where they're not supposed to be together is no small challenge. To be able to keep them engaged over the course of an entire day, I mean, we're operating from 6 to 6. So we don't have too many kiddos that are there for the entirety of the 12 hours, but we have some that come in the morning and will be picked up by late afternoon. We have some that come mid-morning and will be picked up sometime in, before 6 o'clock hours. So we are providing options for kids to get their work done. That's a really essential part for our component of our childcare program, is that as far as we are able, we want kids to go home with their schoolwork completed and completed well, so that they can engage with their families. If their families are utilizing their service, they're on the front lines, they're families of emergency workers, the last thing we want those families to do is to go home and feel like they have things on their plate that we could have helped support them with. So our staff have done an amazing job, and when I say I mean system-wide thinking of the folks that Kelly Lastman has been staffing during the daytime portion of it with our paraprofessionals. And that's been transitioning with our community ed childcare staff who have been integrated with that, as well as the before and after. So we're providing a lot of transition times in terms of spaces. We're not, of course, we don't have all the kids in one space because of not only the social distancing, but just keeping their engagement levels, going outside when we're able to, and then, keeping them engaged through games and various forms of physical activity. So, like I said, our staff have done a really nice job constructing programs to keep them engaged. Right now, we have about 20-some families making use of the transportation option. I would say about half of those families are either from NLA or Leela, and then the other half are our district's students that are doing that as well. So it's going very well. It's taken a lot of coordination, no doubt, but I know that the feedback from families that we've been getting is certainly that it's a much appreciated service to be still providing in our schools, especially for those who are on the front lines in the workforce at this time.
Does anybody have any questions for Corey? I appreciate, Corey, the fact that they're getting time to do their work. I was going to ask that question, so thank you for answering it. That's a big thing for families to carry if they're working, 10, 12 hours a day and then trying to come home and do schoolwork at the same time. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've made sure that we've had technology support, so it isn't just our childcare staff or it isn't our paraprofessionals who are all like the only ones going at this alone. Nobody's going at anything alone in this. Our nurses have done an amazing job helping us out with the social distance guideline and keeping our kids safe as best we're able to. Screening, we're doing temp checks during the day, but we've also had tech support. So knowing that we have distance learning going on and we're utilizing technology as we are here today. And, we're putting all hands on deck, and our staff, from teachers to custodians and keeping the areas clean to paras and childcare staff, have really stepped up to the plate as a board. It certainly is another component like what we're talking about today to be very proud of.
Member Luther?
I just popped onto Jill. I didn't want to interrupt. Corey, it sounds like it's running really smoothly, and you never know what the scale of these are going to be. How many people are from, that was a curiosity, how many Leela and NLA are actually in the system? Because that just popped right out.
Well, none in our childcare system. They are providing childcare at their own sites. But because of the transportation provision, we are transporting them and then transporting them to their site. So the folks that are enrolled in our system are Forest Lake area students only, with the exception of any of our staff who may be having to work on site, who may be bringing their children into our system, and that's a very small population.
Okay.
So Corey, I just have a quick question. And we had our committee meeting last week, but I wanted to ask, given the governor's address today talked about, everybody should be wearing masks now, and I know that we've had it be optional. So are there going to be any changes with that?
We haven't discussed any changes at this point. We have not had a chance to meet now following the governor's meeting here this afternoon. So at this time, we've made it an optional component for both staff and students. When I was at Wyoming just Tuesday, I didn't see anybody who was opting to wear the masks. I think it's been a few staff who have opted to do so, and rightfully so, if they so choose. And then same with the students. It's been a few here and there, but it's been minimal.
Thank you.
Member Olson, did you have something you wanted to say?
No, both of my questions were already asked. Thank you.
All right, we'll transition down to food service. Larry.
Hey, thank you. I'm going to just share with you the numbers. We've got quite a good outcome with serving out at actually 5 different sites, because now we're at Linwood. And of the 1,092 meals that were shared out today, Kathy tells me it's close to 48% breakfast and 52% lunch. And as you can see, the numbers vary quite a bit. People are able to pick up multiple meals. And if you look back to April 9th, for example, you'll see quite a large number. And that was because we were covering several days in that time frame.
Larry, your sheet's not displaying.
Oh, sorry. I had hoped that it would, but that's probably because of the old Windows 7 machine I'm using. So we'll go back, and it says an error occurred. Let me see if I can try one more time.
There you go.
Very good. So, as I mentioned, we're in the thousands per day this week. And when there was a bit of time between school availability and work availability, look at April 9th, for example. Folks grabbed more than a couple of meals and breakfasts at that time. Right now, we're doing curbside distribution, so that's pretty cool. And Kathy is already planning to do summer meal service. So with that, I can answer any questions you might have just on food service.
How does the curbside work, Larry?
Well, people pull up and the meals are distributed right there curbside. Sometimes they'll have to communicate that they want a couple or they want 3 days worth, but that's how that works.
Wow, so they don't have to call in first, they just show up.
We do have folks helping us with inventory, so there is some communication going on.
That's
Not a
awesome.
requirement, though. Later in the segment, I tell you about budget stuff and things like that, but I have prepared a couple of answers already. One, I don't know, but I'll find out. And two, I don't know. That depends on the feds and the state.
Larry, are we tracking who's picking up these meals? Like, are they free and reduced kids, or do we not care who's picking them up?
So we're not tracking by name who's picking up.
Okay.
When we deliver meals to free and reduced folks, they have to sign a waiver once. That's a USDA requirement, but we're not tracking by name, so we don't have that broken out.
And this is one of the ways we're using bus drivers, in addition to picking kids up and bringing them in for childcare.
And we have food distribution at 5 sites now, right?
Yes.
That's terrific. Thank you, Larry.
MSBA's been sending some information out recently around QComp and teacher development evaluation, TDE. So we have obviously been in correspondence with FLE around QComp. There are a lot of pieces tied to QComp that are now playing out very differently in a distance learning situation. And this is an area that Donna and Diane work with, so I'll turn it over to them.
Yeah, Donna and I are both on the QComp Oversight Committee committee, and we had a meeting last week to talk about some of the changes now that MDE has provided guidance around what we might expect to be different around QComp and TDE. And you'll remember that with QComp, there are observations that are a part of that. Some of them are normally done by peer coaches, and then probationary educators have observations by administrators, as do what we call high cycle educators who would have been continuing contract every third year. They have an observation. MDE has put all formal observations on hold, so those are all suspended for the year. And we have determined as a group that all of the evaluations will just be based on the data previous to the start of distance learning. So at this point, all formal observations are done, and all of our educators will have that, whatever QComp results are a part of that, the data that was up to the point that we started our distance learning time. One thing that our oversight committee determined was we normally ask for 2 out of the 3 observations to be proficient, or the final observation to be proficient. And because many of our educators would have only had 2 observations this year, we're saying that if one of the 2 were proficient, that is that they are eligible for the QComp funds for that. Another piece of QComp is the individual student achievement goal. That's about student growth. And for our educators, they set those goals way back in the fall, and they determine what the measure is that they'll use in order to determine if they're able to move their students forward in learning. And normally they don't have that measure finalized until the spring of the year. So the guidance from MDE was that if their goal has already been met, then that should be counted as having met their goal. If their goal is not yet met and they no longer are able to administer the measure that it would have been about, they could have the option to change that goal if they wanted to. As a part of our discussion with the educators who are on the committee, there was also a determination that we would allow educators to opt out of that if they felt that they had enough on their plate already with what they were doing with distance learning, that their goal wasn't going to be able to be attained before the end of the year because the measure was no longer available, and they didn't want to worry about making a change to that goal. So they could just simply opt out of that portion if they chose to. There are also site goals, and the site goals are always tied into standardized measures. In many cases, our schools use MCAs. In some cases, the high school has used ACT scores over the year. And of course, none of those are going to occur this year. So MDE had already stated that site goals would not be able to be achieved this year because we wouldn't have those standardized measures. So we really had two options to either just have those funds go to our staff development funds at our building sites, as we normally do when a site does not meet their goal, or we could choose to do something around rolling it forward and having our educators possibly earn double compensation the following year. And the discussion within the oversight committee was that it made sense to have it actually just go to the building staff development team for this coming year, so that way those funds could be used for professional development for all of the educators that are part of that site. And then finally, professional learning communities is the other piece of QComp and TDE. And I think we had shared previously that professional learning communities, they have a certain number of minutes each month that they need to actually document and be able to write up the minutes about what it is that they did and how it was around student achievement. That has actually been suspended for the rest of the year as well. So the educators are no longer required to meet for those minutes or document their time. And the interesting piece there that our administrators have had some conversation around is we actually think our educators are participating much more in professional learning communities right now than they ever have, because it has been how they are managing to survive getting ready for distance learning as they got up and running with it, just collaborating with their colleagues in their department of grade levels, working with some of the other staff in the building. So it's pretty much been 100% professional learning community time as they've been doing their planning in getting ready for distance learning. So although we're not requiring the documentation of it anymore, they are certainly working in professional learning communities.
Tom is working with the teacher organization on whether or not an MOU that spells all that out makes sense. Donna, an update there?
Did send them that proposed MOU, which is fairly standardized, pretty much lays out all the stuff that Diane just talked about. If I'm remembering correctly, it also discusses some probationary stuff, but we tried our best to get 3 in for probationary teachers are required to have 3 evaluations in every year of their probation status, which generally speaking is not a problem if you retain them and carry them forward and they ultimately reach continuing contract status. No one cares. Can become a problem if people are non-renewed. So notwithstanding the current state of affairs and the current and the proposed agreement, we did try, and I think we managed in all cases to get 3 on the books in some fashion, whether it be from previously observed things, largely because we can make agreements, the state can say generalized things, but the statute still stands as it is. So we felt like there was a little bit of potential exposure there, so we did lay in that third evaluation for the people who were on the non-renew list a couple weeks ago here. We did quote this memorandum of understanding to the plea leadership and got a response from them today, essentially more or less agreeing. They did say, but can't we have oversight discuss that one piece? But oversight did discuss the one piece, so they'll kind of chew on that, and we'll see where we go. I think it'll be fine. largely going to happen one way or the other, whether we have this memorandum. But the memorandum would be desirable, so that we have a memorialization of what the understanding was at the time.
So Don, would the MOU be in place of the document that MSBA generated? And what did you think of that document?
The MOU is the document that MSBA generated.
Oh, so are we using that template then?
Yeah, that's the one that we floated them. Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So by and large, mostly they don't have any difficulties with it. It was that site goal piece that Diane talked about that kind of got their attention. But there is a representative of FLE who, well, you know, there are members of FLE on the group, and there is a ranking officer, if you will, of FLE who sits on the group as well.
Thank you.
There are important pieces with QComp and TDE that tie to performance, that tie to evaluations, that tie to pay. And the more clarity and understanding and documentation we have around how we move forward through this phase and how those play out is really important. So the MOU will be an important piece to that. So transitioning down to the next piece, I'm going to tee this up and then turn it over to Larry. You'll recall as we started distance learning, the directive was keep your staff employed. The general fund is going to continue to receive per pupil funding, and districts will be made whole financially. A week into it, the department and governor realized that maybe they knew this, but it became very clear that there are different funds within school districts, specifically community ed and food service, that are fee-based, not tied to the general fund. The response from the governor and MDE was that districts can shift monies from one fund to another to cover those costs. And then there was the realization that without fees coming in community ed and food service, there can be some real budget hardship in districts. So the expectation that would keep people employed also then came a couple of weeks down the road that we could let hourly people furlough hourly people that are tied to fee-based programs. We've made some decisions there with respect to them, and I'll turn it over to Larry.
Yeah, so we did not choose to lay anybody off for the current time frame, and that is something that the school board could certainly discuss. I'm going to try and present again. Is the document up on the screen?
Yep, we see it, Larry.
Okay. And like Dr. Massey alluded to, people are finally realizing, and thankfully with Dr. Massey on that school finance working group, it actually was documented well by the MSBA in the middle of this article that budget challenges for community ed and nutrition services are going to be a real issue. We shared with our not only building and grounds, but finance committee a couple weeks ago that we're going to be bringing some budget adjustments to the school board. While the general fund isn't of a material nature, we've got some revenue increases and decreases due to refunds for spring sports. The big hits are going to be food service and community education. As a matter of fact, the food service is very likely to go negative, and community education will wipe out its $1 million fund balance. That's with keeping the staff in play for the rest of the school year. And if we were ever to change course on that, we do have at least a couple of week lag for notification requirements to union employees before we could actually end up with being able to place somebody on unemployment. So there's some timing issues that we face and some other things, and that led us ultimately to the decision and also to honor several of the school board members' requests, particularly through consensus, that we try to keep the employees on staff as long as possible. I'll be bringing this specific set of budget adjustments to the school board at your regular May meeting. This will be one of the action items, so I think only a couple of you haven't seen them at this point in time. In a minute, we'll be able to go through some questions on some of those amounts, and I can put this back up. But I just want to share with you long term, we believe we're probably going to run into one of those situations that we not only faced back in the 90s, but a couple of times in the 2000s, where we had 3 years of stagnant per pupil funding. And it's highly likely, with what we're seeing from a macroeconomic point of view, that even if the legislature decides to put sales tax in as a revenue source, school districts will be treated much like they have in the past, as you can see in this chart. And since we're a people business, that's going to mean most likely trying to settle contracts with freezes. So it's not a good outlook, but we actually are better off than others. You know, with the passage of our referendum, even with some of our right sizing, Cambridge Isanti is cutting another $3 million, and they cut over $4 million a year ago. I just grabbed a couple of headlines from the last couple of days. That's why Faribault shows up. But again, a couple of years of cuts. I think one of the most devastating sets of cuts in the metro area is probably coming from the Burnsville, Egan Savage district. And you've probably seen multiple newspaper articles on that. So in terms of issues and concerns, it really is going to be a long-term problem for school districts. With that, I can stand for some questions before we transition back to Steve and Corey on fee-based.
I can't let you be a guy without a question.
Sure you can.
I know this isn't a marketing opportunity, but with bus companies closing in other countries for lack of fees, are we putting it out there how we're supporting and how it's not just the school district supporting employees, it's the community and how your tax dollars are keeping all these people as employed as possible?
Well, one of the things when we look to a long-range outlook about we're going to have some struggles and we're probably going to try and settle contracts with zeros for a couple of years. Tomorrow I'm part of a panel for state negotiators, and we'll be talking about building up goodwill. Now is the time to generate the goodwill, build up the goodwill, because as you settle contracts with limited resources, you'll expend that goodwill. So locally here, yes, we're going to absolutely work on those factors. As far as advertising elsewhere, I'm not sure. We would love, if you're suggesting the idea that Forest Lake become part of the bus transportation business for St. Francis or a portion of Anoka Hennepin, we would love to outsource and control our own revenues through contract, because the state method, that's part of the reason why Steve's on that task force. The state method leaves us wanting.
That would be a novel concept to become a bus company, but more saying we've been taking care of our drivers. I don't know what happened in New York, but they just shut down three bus companies went bankrupt.
We've been taking care of our employees for quite some time, as you've seen, and we're going to bank on that goodwill. But I know that some of the folks that I just showed you headlines had settlements in excess of what state revenues provided them. That's something we're going to try to avoid.
And I guess this is a big question. Do we have assurances that money is still coming for per pupil funding? I know they can't claw back anything, but when's the next time they're supposed to give you money?
So in the general fund, that's absolutely the case, and they transmit funds to us every 15 days. we'll have a minor cash flow hiccup with the counties extending some penalty deadlines, but that won't impact more than 5 or 10% of our actual tax component, which is less than 15% of the general fund. And even if we wiped out the county tax payments, we still have our own cash flow that we could manage that. So we're not going to see any effects in the general fund, but as you saw from the prior slides, that community education and food service, it's devastating.
So Larry, I have a question. I know we can talk about it at the next meeting, but I know, so we as a general fund would have to fund those losses, is what you're saying. We can do that. Is what was
If there
Dr.
were
Gaston
2
said?
years in a row of losses for either community ed or food service, then we would be required to make a transfer.
Okay.
And at current projections, food service would recover in the second year and be positive again.
Okay.
Now, to Kate's point earlier,
Yeah, I'm the next meeting, but
I'm sorry, Julie.
go ahead, Steve.
Go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. No, I'm done. Go ahead.
All right. This might set up your question as well. So as we go into the summer, the per pupil funding for this school year will obviously take us to June 30, and then we start per pupil funding already committed into the 2021 year. But those dollars are not and never have been designed to keep bus drivers and community ed staff and paras paid through the summer. So there really shouldn't be an expectation that that would be any different going into this summer. However, if we're running smaller community ed programs, smaller food service programs with the absence of summer school, depending upon how that plays out, we may be in a furlough situation or less people employed than we have had in the past as we get into the summer. I really would invite the board to think about considering the summer to be a different situation regarding hourly employees than during the school year that we're finishing up June 5th or technically June 30th.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I don't know if that stirs any questions or discussion.
I'm sure we'll be talking more about that at the next meeting, summer school and what the expectations are, because that of course would be busing and food service and things like that. So yeah, that's going to play into everything. So thank you.
Thank you all. Turn it back to you, Steve.
Okay, thank you. So on to summer school, what's interesting is the not stay-at-home order, but distance learning is technically until the end of June. The school districts that have alternative schedules, other than the typical school calendar like we're on, year-round calendars, every school district ends by June 30th, if not before. So technically, the distance learning order goes to June 30. We typically start summer school in mid-June. We won't be able to do that, even if our situation is such where we could bring kids into school. So we're taking that into consideration, and then that begs the question, is there merit in some kind of a online or distance learning program for summer school? We're evaluating that. And or do we consider waiting for a 3-4 week intensive ramp up or catch up model if kids can come into school in July or early August? So there's kind of a either or both and situation ahead of us as we get into summer. And again, we'll wait until we get further into May, if not early June, before we're going to get some indication on that. But we're evaluating whether or not we can be effective in distance learning or online learning for summer school, or if we should do an intensive catch-up model for July or early August if we're allowed to bring kids in for summer school. So we're sort of in a holding pattern around summer school.
I have a quick clarifying question. Are you saying summer school might either be distance learning or an intensive program at the end of the summer, but it's all summer school? Or were you saying we're either going to do summer school or bring all the kids back early for a catch-up couple weeks?
Yeah, we won't be allowed to bring all students back. We have to qualify through extended school year or ALC funding. So it would all be under the community service umbrella. Kelly, anything you want to add there?
Oh, no, I just wanted to add to Steve's comments that targeted services covers grades K through 8, and then 9 through 12 is credit recovery. And on Tuesday, we'll make those decisions whether we run both. Our intention is business as usual because our start date is June 15th through July 15th. As you all know, I know it's more challenging for the elementary kids to engage in the distance learning piece. Our secondary kids appear to be doing fairly well. So it's truly important that we have that credit recovery piece for 9-12 so that they can continue their path toward graduation. But we'll be talking about that more at Ad Council on Tuesday.
Yeah, that's a good clarification. 9-12 can easily be online distance learning, and we can keep a regular schedule for that. The K-8 program would be different depending upon whether or not we could bring kids into the school or not.
And targeted services funding requires that teachers work one-to-one with kids. So they have to have that, not one-to-one, but direct instruction has to occur for us to receive revenue for those students.
Steve, do we see more kids maybe qualifying for summer school due to the distant learning platform?
You know, Jill, it's possible. It'll be hard to determine if a student who was not eligible before becomes eligible now because they fell further behind. We won't have those measures in place.
Okay.
But there's some flexibility in those measures if there's a consideration for a student who's fallen significantly behind, mental health, just other categories that creates eligibility for students. So we would have quite a bit of flexibility there if a student needed that, if we considered the need for the student or the parent felt the need as well.
So Steve, that's kind of my question that Jill touched on is, when will we know and how can we determine how far our students are declining? Because they're talking that nationally there's going to be a big decline in math skills. And I have had several parents ask about summer school, and I might have missed the sign up, but if they haven't, I know my kid is going to need to go now. And then the governor on the phone call last week, I think I mentioned to you that he talked a lot about, or a little bit, he touched on how summer school could look, and we'd have to keep the groups small, and maybe they'd only come twice a week, they'd flip-flop with others, Friday could be a special ed day. So what are your thoughts on how we can find out about that loss of skill?
Yeah, that's going to be a real challenge for us. If we're allowed to bring students into school, we're going to want to do that. We haven't received that guidance yet from the governor. Hopefully, as we get into next week and the week beyond, we'll get some guidance there. We do know, and we've had early conversations already about the need to start next year with early assessment, identifying gaps in learning. The start of the year from third grade into fourth grade, a fourth grader, those first weeks, if not a couple of months, might look different than a typical start of a fourth grade, because there's going to be a need to assess where kids are at and adjust what we're asking kids to do and do some catch-up kind of work in both literacy and math.
So if targeted services or for ESY, could we do some of that checking during that period of time if we are able to hold ESY?
Absolutely. If we are, we'll be doing as much assessing there and remediation and catch-up work. Unfortunately, we won't catch all of our kids there. So in a sense, because that's elective and not compulsory, there's still going to be a whole host of kids that we need to identify where they're at, what gaps were created through distance learning, and then have some real intentional work to help those kids catch up.
Right now, we have through K-8, we have about 600 students who have been referred by teachers, and about 190 kids as of today who have actually registered. So today, our task was to send letters out, making sure that families knew that they needed to go on the URL site to register their students. So we'll see. And then after that piece, depending on what we decide at Ad Council, we'll canvass our families to see who may be interested in the possible distance learning, or if we will offer something in addition to that distance learning piece in June. But we do have, when we have the students register, and we have about 40 students registered from Leela as well, it's a chance for us to enroll other students from other districts and show them actually what we do. But we have test scores for kids. So we have their fast testing in math and reading. We actually know where they're at right now when they come into summer programming. So at least we have one data point to go by so that we can make progress with our kids during the summertime.
So is there any way to open that up to parents that may have missed signing up and now are kind of panicking that we've had all this distant learning and they feel like their student is behind?
Yeah, if students meet eligibility, they can enroll. And, you know, there's 12 eligibility pieces that just about any kid can enroll, to be honest. Any kid really qualifies, in a sense. Any student could qualify. But we usually have that process go through the classroom teacher. But certainly we can open it up and we can talk about how we communicate that out to our community within our Ad Council if we need to do that.
That would be great.
To answer your question, Gil, once we determine what we're able to do and what the model may look like, we'll work with classroom teachers and parents as a whole with communicating that out, capturing kids that registered earlier, capturing kids and families that may identify a need now, including classroom teachers who will see a need now that may perhaps didn't exist before.
Sounds good.
If you've looked at the calendar, you might be aware that 2021 school year starts in 4 months. You think about where we're at today with distance learning, stay-at-home orders, social distancing. We've had a lot of conversation about what opening up school looks like. Think about 400 plus kids in a lunchroom, 30 plus kids in a tight chemistry lab, biology room, 28 kids in an elementary classroom, 50 to 60 kids on a bus. And we're all nervous about what that might look like in 4 months, given where we're at today. None of us have a crystal ball. It's hard to know exactly what that's going to look like. However, given the fact that there's just 4 months ahead of us, we need to start thinking now about what school might look like as we prepare a system for kids coming back. So we've got a spreadsheet developed of things we need to consider. For instance, you've all been to retail stores, grocery stores, where they've got plexiglass in front of cash registers. Do we need to consider that for certain employees or food service lines? Do we have enough masks and gloves? Do we have thermometers if we need thermometers? All things that we need to be thinking about as we move toward the start of next year. So we don't want to be caught with it's August 15th and kids are coming back and we don't have the supplies and the materials that we may need. So we're starting some deep conversation about what we might need on hand to bring kids back next year, cleaning supplies, etc. There's a lot of unknown there, but we'll start that work now, and we're hoping, beyond belief, that kids are back with us next year. So we're going to plan with that in mind and start bringing resources to the table that we will need to start the year.
I have a comment suggestion. This is just, I've been keeping my ears open for the past 2 weeks about what other school districts and things are doing. Do we have the opportunity to cut our classes in half and I guess use more specialist time or an AM PM model, just so there's fewer kids in each classrooms, because we can't make the classrooms bigger. And you're right, some of them are pretty tight with all the kids in them, but if we could have kind of 4 sessions of second grade, but without hiring a 4th teacher. So I don't know if that would be timeshare teaching or if that's an option. I know some places are saying we're going to have people who start in the afternoon and we're going to have people who start in the morning. We're just splitting our school in half to get numbers.
Yeah, we've looked at those models, and if we were to go with a split shift model like that, Kate, I can't imagine the state's going to double our transportation funds to make that work. That would present a real hardship for us, quite honestly. We'd need to double food service staff because we're feeding kids twice. So those are some of the considerations. The other thought would be a every other day model, where first half of the alphabet comes Monday, Wednesday, the other half Tuesday, Thursday. Fridays is either remediation or every other day Friday. But then you think about childcare for families who every other day need to arrange some different kind of childcare. But these are all things that could be possible and that we'll need to be considering as we get into the summer.
And like you said with lunchrooms, lunches in classrooms or repurposing lunchrooms as more classroom space, so there's space and.
Yep.
Okay.
So I have a lot of confidence in our superintendent and in our admin and all of our staff that they're going to look at all those models. I mean, there's a lot of information out there. My only fear is that if we get a plan, and I'm certain it'll be an excellent one, that we let parents know. I'm hearing that quite a few of them are apprehensive. You know, we've heard there's going to be another wave in the fall. And I think we have some opportunistic charter schools in our boundaries that are going to capitalize on, we'll come here, we have smaller classrooms, and we're ready, we're going to do it this way. So I hope when we get that excellent plan in mind, that we are reassuring parents that we are ready for them and we are prepared with our post-pandemic or mid-pandemic tools and just communicating that, like Steve, you do an excellent job of. But I do fear that they're gonna start a promotion that, you know, they all wear PPE, come here.
And to dovetail on that, Gail, I've heard parents say, well, if we're staying home anyway, I'm just going to use one of the online academies or try homeschooling. And I tell them all homeschooling is a lot harder than you think. Having school at home is different than creating your entire curriculum. But is it a discussion point having the option to keep distance learning for those who want distance learning, to maybe just suppress some numbers, keep people at home that like that model? But again, that's going to be putting burden on teachers who will have in-classroom students and distance learners. So the sorting of that.
Steve. And then there's that they say that if the bus comes tomorrow, they have the kids ready. So
we'll put them on any bus for going anywhere.
Yeah.
Understood. Steve, can we move to the last portion there with the utilizing the school should the public health department need to utilize it as a mass dispensing option?
Yep. Forest Lake High School's an identified site for Washington County for mass dispensing. They've built that model number of years ago, and it's well established. There's been tabletop exercises on how that might play out and how that might work. One of the scenarios, of course, was pandemic, and here we are. So if there is, or when there is a vaccine, it's highly likely that they will use mass dispensing sites, including perhaps the high school, for that. If that's the case and they need evenings, we'll make it available. If they need daytime, we'll look at ways we can accommodate that as well. I think we've all heard that we're not back to normal until there's a vaccine in play. So we're going to want to be ready to accommodate Washington County if that is the case. I was on the phone yesterday with the Deputy Commissioner at Washington County in charge of public health, and they're already doing their scenarios and planning down in Inver Grove, Matamidi, Forest Lake for that mass dispensing. They're all over this from a state standpoint and a county standpoint, and we have a role in that as an identified site.
Steve, could we just leave the graduation stage up and then just have people drive up? They walk up the stage, get a shot, and then get back in their car and go?
Yeah, you know, what's interesting is Captain Greg Weiss is public health and public management for safety management for the city. They're using graduation as a test site for a model of how to flow people through the parking lot for mass dispensing. So it is a practice run for them. Interesting.
You thought you were joking.
Excellent.
If you have not been on the COVID-19 website for the district, please do that. There's a wealth of information. If you're challenged with a question and you can't get a hold of me or one of our directors, you're most likely going to find an answer there to any question you have. It's a really robust site that Renee's created, and it's constantly being evolved. All of our lesson plans are there as well from each school and each grade level.
All right. Well, thanks, Steve. Does anybody have any other questions that didn't get addressed? Hearing nothing, I think with that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor signify by the sign of aye.
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 All right. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
You guys are
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all the great information.
Yes.
Bye, Gail.